I'm Deion Imade, and this week on the Old Poke Show, Clint and I go ahead and put a bow on Arizona State, and we preview South Alabama with AL.com sports writer Creg Stephenson. All that here on the Old Poke Show. Welcome to the Old Poke Show. This is the show where we talk to Cowboy legends from the past and the present and review the OSU program going into the future. I'm your man, Deion Imade, and as always, number 10 himself, Clint Chelf, is with me. How's it going, 10?
It's going well, man. I think I'm still recovering from trying to stay up and watch the game. I know you had to do post game, so you definitely had to stay up. How are you feeling? This week.
I got off the airway at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then got home at like 2:30. Like it was a long night. It was long. But when you were watching the game, like I don't know how. I know you got kiddos running around and all this other stuff.
I'm gonna keep it a buck with you.
Come on now.
I fell asleep part of the second half, and I woke up and watched the rest of it. I was sitting on the couch, man, and I was just dozing off. But I did watch most of it. So.
All right, because that was one of the games that you had to have the DVR fully.
I went back and rewatched.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, like I was like invested because of how the first half went, and then how things were going in the second. I was very invested. I didn't even realize that it was like. And like towards the middle of the third quarter, and it was like midnight, and I was like, "Oh crap!" Like the game went by pretty fast. So I was entrenched. Everybody at work and everywhere around town has been asking me like, "How was the game? How late it was?" And And I'm not gonna lie, Clint. I'm starting to regret us inviting Arizona State and Arizona to the Big 12. I mean, if we're gonna have to deal with that every year, that's
Utah, BYU, the late slot games are gonna be really, really hard, man.
Bro, we got to do these morning afternoon games. We got to strictly, bro. I'm not here for this. We need to put these guys in the afternoon slot. All of you play at 12.
Yeah, it was tough, but I want to give a shout out up front to the Oklahoma State fans that went out there. I saw a couple pictures, and it honestly looked like a home game on the sideline. So, shout out to everybody who traveled out there. I know, obviously. Scottsdale's a fun place to travel to.
Hell yeah.
Regardless, so
shout out to that disposable income.
Yeah, right. But no, it really looked, traveling well. I think making a statement on a team coming into the Big 12 is awesome. So
and people got to really pat themselves on the back on that, because that helps the program a lot. People pay attention to that. I mean, bowl game, people pay attention to that. Like so many people around the country, recruits pay attention to that. Like that means something. So we do need everybody to travel when they can, and if you can. So that shout out to those who did, for real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about your brand and the eyeballs that you get, and that just helps expand and continue to grow the brand, and that's what matters nowadays.
For real, though.
So yeah, shout out to everybody. Where do you want to start? With the game.
I mean, we might as well start from the very beginning. I mean, that first half that didn't look so good, but I mean, I'm sure you're talking about offense and defense. So
anywhere, positions, whatever. Obviously, we need to talk about quarterbacks. We can do that whenever.
Save the best for last.
Sure. Yeah. I saw a stat. Speaking of first half, and I saw it on Twitter that Oklahoma State is leading the Big 12 in missed tackles with 38 through 2 games.
Don't tell me that.
10 more than the next. So, but no. But here's what I'm going to say, though. They're averaging 14, giving up 14 points a game in 2 games. So it's not like the defense has been bad. Just think about how much better it could be and will get with tackling. I mean, you can talk a little bit about tackling definitely gets better as you go through the season, right? That's one of the things that you get more used to when you're coming off the offseason of not tackling, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, let's go ahead and start with the defense, and this is something that I've mentioned a numerous of times, is like they don't practice full go tackling anymore. I mean, you just rather just keep the team healthy than to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, and I wanted you to explain why, and it's because guys get hurt so frequently.
So frequently, man. There's a number of careers that we've witnessed ourselves in practice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for the one that comes to my mind all the time is Clint. You remember that offensive lineman that we had? Was it Devin or
Yeah.
Don? Remember he was
Devin,
like big, bro. This dude was like a
Yeah.
big Greek god, and he was like the next coming, bro. He was gonna be the
next
guy.
Russell Okung, man. He was a specimen. Yeah.
Bro, he was a left tackle that was going to be anchor offensive line, and he was going to be so good. Like we saw it in practice. This dude was phenomenal. And one practice, somebody gets slung into his legs, and I don't remember what exactly happened to his knee, but he never played at OSU. He never played, and all that because we were going full go. And in practice, and somebody loses their career, and our team is hurt because of it. Getting hurt in a game, that's something that happens. But getting hurt in practice, that's something that we just wish
it's unavoidable.
You could eliminate. Yep. And so I don't have a problem at all with the defense not tackling and going full go in practice. Not at all. But there's consequences to everything that you do. And the consequence to that is you're going to miss tackles. You're not going to be in game shape to go full go in practice. So that's something you're just going to have to build up to during the season. So hopefully they continue to get better. I mean, they got, a little better than last week, and hopefully they'll continue to progress. But God, leading the Big 12, that's something I do not want to see.
I know, and I almost, and maybe I'm a homer because of it, but the defense has looked really good. I felt like for the most part. There's been a few missed assignments, but I'm really high on the defense. I think Coach Nardo's done a great job. I like the scheme. I like how they've played for the most part. But when you get that cleaned up, I mean, watch out, because I think this is a really talented unit.
Yeah, it's definitely a really talented unit, and I do like what the beginning of the Nardo experience has turned into. There's still mistakes that are being made that that needs to be cleaned up, especially in the first half. I mean, the missed tackles are one thing, and that's something that's going to progress and get better. But in the secondary, you can't make mistakes. You can't have momentary lapses. Right. I think everybody was thinking that it was Lyric Rawls that made the mistake, and he had some mistakes in the game that
you're talking about on the long touch, the first touchdown, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it was Lyric Rawls. I think it was Ty Williams. He came in for Kendall Daniels. He was playing that middle rover position, and I think it was cover 3. And we had 2 safeties on the left third of the defense when there should have been a safety there, then Ty Williams in the middle in the post, and then a corner on the opposite third. And because Ty Williams left his spot vacant, the middle of the field was wide open, and they hit that post route on us, and it went for 6. When you are a safety, mistakes like that, when you are a corner, mistakes like that turn into 6 points. And that's exactly why. And I need individuals, I need those safeties to all be able to play and not have mistakes like that, because we can't afford, I don't want Kendall Daniels playing 70 snaps a game. I don't want Lyric Rawls playing 70 snaps a game. I need those safeties to be interchangeable so we can get in and get some guys rested and keep their legs ready in the fourth quarter. So hopefully they get those things corrected. But other than that, I mean, they came up big in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, it largely reminds me, and I know this is crazy. You're right about you're right about 70 snaps a game. We do want them to play 70 snaps. I want to see Kendall play 70 snaps a game in week 10 and 11 and 12. So that's, you got to take them off now. But, the adjustment wise from the first half to the second half, and I this may be blasphemy saying this, but that Knowles defense used to make crazy adjustments and come out in the second half and just shut people down. So, obviously way too early to be determined on this. Stevens, not enough experience, and obviously Coach Nardo's a completely new system, but at least some parallels to be drawn there, I feel like.
Yeah, first of all, especially in the second half, you got to give it up to Colin Oliver. Man, we talked about it in the pregame show on the radio, Clint, how this is this is a dude that is playing a new position. He's going to have to get comfortable and familiar with it. And we can't expect for Colin Oliver to be making plays like he was when he played defensive end. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong, because they put him on the edge, even at linebacker. That hit in the first half where he put his helmet on the football and that thing popped out. I was up in my seat clapping, bro, because that was a grown man hit. That was a linebacker coming downhill and filling a hole like you should. So he's getting, like, we always talk about this, the biggest jumping and biggest improvement happened from week 1 to week 2, and he made a monster leap at being a big-time linebacker in this conference. So I'm looking forward to see him to continue to grow, and I felt bad for that that left tackle over there that they put him up against, because he was eating his lunch.
Yeah, he's got to be like the Micah Parsons of this defense. He's got to be able to rush the passer, make tackles in space, kind of do everything, and he did. But maybe that's a preview. Deion, are you giving us a little preview about where you're going with the helmet sticker this week?
I'm not saying nothing. I'm not saying nothing. All right.
Okay.
But I mean, the defense, they had a lackluster first half, and thank God for Nick Martin kind of erasing some mistakes here and there in the first half and playing fast. And
he's been a dog, man.
He's been a dog. Barrel. He's been amazing. But the second half, they got things cleaned up. They got a turnover and they played fast, and they made some adjustments. So that's good to see, and hopefully it continues next week versus South Alabama. But Clint, if you don't mind, do you want to switch to that offensive side?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
we can. I liked some of the creativity that we had on the play calling, specifically, the motions with Presley, which I'd been calling for, the motion to him in the backfield for the final touchdown, then run him in the flats. I mean, just move that guy around as much as possible and get him the ball in space. It's truly that simple. Largely like the defense started, the offensive line was the same way. Pretty slow in the first half. Again, I think I've seen, I didn't write down the numbers. If we've had 300 yards rushing so far, 240 of them have been in the second half, and 60 in the first half.
For sure, man. So zero rushing in the first half was not a cute thing to see. But I mean, to end the game with 113 wasn't too shabby.
Yeah, so and it's been that way for 2 games now. So whatever they're figuring out at halftime, have to continue to build on that. We've got to be able to rush the ball in the first half, but the creativity is ticking up, which I like. Stribling, we talked about him as one of our guys in before the first game. Talked about him last week, and then this week, gets a touchdown, and he just looks really good. He looks like a really good player at this level, and he's going to be a guy along with Jaden Bray and Presley that I really like. Those receivers, I feel like that they're going to be able to help whoever ends up playing quarterback, and then Ollie Gordon. He's got to start getting 12, 15 carries, I feel like.
I can't argue with that for the sheer fact that, but in the first half, you get Colin going, and he looks like he's the dude that needs to get 10 and 11 carries. But in the second half, Ollie Gordon was being able to see the holes and have good footwork and break for those long ones. So I see your point there, because they just have to find the hot hand and feed it.
I agree. I think Ollie Gordon has a really high ceiling. I think he's very tough to tackle, and I'm completely okay. I don't want to rotate quarterbacks, but I'm very fine rotating running backs. I think it makes a ton of sense. So
we're not against the rotation; we're just against the rotation for certain positions.
Right. So all in all, pretty good week for the offense, I would say. Not good, not great, but getting better, and hopefully, starting to open it up a little bit more as we continue to figure out who, might be this team's quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with you from that analysis. Stribling did impress in this showing, especially that touchdown pass from Gunnar Gundy. I mean, that thing was humming. And a little bit, a little out of the, not, it wasn't, those slant routes, wide receivers prefer them to be in your chest.
Yeah, he snagged it.
Yeah, he snagged that thing. It was kind of out of, his range, and it was coming fast. And so he impressed me with the hands, especially on that play. But Jaden Bray, as a big physical wide receiver, also had a really good game. And
he looks like a dude as well.
He looked like a dude. I don't know if he really caught that ball. That that one was a little questionable. That one was a little questionable.
Yeah.
But
if that would have been against Texas or OU, your mark would be getting some mega hate online.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. But yeah, y'all ain't in the Big 12 yet, so we get that call. But yeah, Jaden Bray impressed as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing him really get after it, because he could be a wide receiver that's dominant in this league.
Yeah, well said. Oh man, you want to talk about quarterbacks?
Yeah. All right. Let's do this. All right. Everybody's been calling for information. I know
I made a comment on Twitter, and I got some people that were wondering, so we'll talk about it. One person said that they thought maybe that Coach Gundy is delaying picking because they thought that Gunnar had won the job, but he didn't want to seem biased. And Gunnar may have won the job. I have no idea, because obviously nobody knows. But there's one thing that Gunny doesn't worry about what anyone thinks. So if that were the case,
he said it multiple times. He's not on social media.
Yeah, he would just name him. So we can eliminate that right there. One thing I have been thinking about, as I continue to watch this and try to figure out what's going on. Zane Flores is, waiting, kind of sitting. He's not a part of the competition. And what is the repercussions of naming Garrett Rangel? And this is something that Garrett would be a redshirt freshman. And so, he talks a lot about the transfer portal, Coach Gundy, that is. And if there's a guy that has, 3 or 4 years left of eligibility that's a starter, what does that do to the guy that just came in as a freshman? And so I think that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I was thinking about that. I hadn't heard anybody really talk about that. There's obviously enough to talk about with the other 3 quarterbacks, but something to think about at least. I feel like Coach Gundy has made it a point to mention the transfer portal when discussing quarterbacks.
Yeah, man. See, that's the thing, because here's what you're asking me. The math, is it mathing? Because if you look at the number here, you're looking at a situation where you're going to have to play behind an individual for, if you're Flores, you're going to have to play behind an individual for like 2, maybe 3 more years. And then so you're looking at your situation like, am I going to get a fair shake, or is this guy, got so much experience ahead of me that I need to go find a place elsewhere? I understand what you're saying here, but then also on the back end, Clint, you're thinking with Bowman, where bringing the transfer portal again, you don't act like coaches aren't out there, doing some bad mouth, talking about other programs that other kids are thinking about transferring, going to. So here you're feeding them a line where you're saying, well, look at where this guy transferred to, and they didn't even play him. So they don't really, play transfers over there. So that's another, thing you have to worry about. If you don't play Bowman, that's another thing that people could say. And that's why, you kind of want to, give him a fair shake as well. There's so many different variables that come into play in this situation. But honestly, at the end of the day, you have to play the best guy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've been asked a few times about what I would do. And so I will tell you right now, here's what I would do. I was gonna ask you, Clint. Hold on.
Well, Clint, if you were in this situation, what would you do?
I'm glad you asked that, Deion. and I think there's a few prevailing thoughts on it. typically one of the main ones I see, and I was a victim of this, is if it's close, go with the younger guy. And most people say, if it's at least close enough, go with the younger guy, because that way you're building for the future. And as somebody who's been in this situation, I couldn't disagree more with that train of thought. I think you should go with the guy, even if he's 1% better, that's older. And I think that you go with that guy for obviously his experience, but I think it also shows that at least you have a pathway to start. If you put in the time, and I know Bowman's transferred in, that's kind of a different element, but he came to this program when kind of the sky was falling. Everybody was transferring away. We didn't know what was going to be going on. And I think that has to count for something. His leadership has been mentioned a ton. But I like going with the guy because it shows that you can earn it if you stick with it instead of leaving. And I know that's kind of backwards because Bowman transferred in, but eventually you're going to get your time. And I've always said, I think it's easier with more mature guys if you sit them down and you tell Alan Bowman, hey, we've given you the reins. It's been however many games and it hasn't gone well. We're going to give another guy a shot. I know that me and my situation when I was, a freshman or sophomore versus when I was a senior, I could understand that. And that's a pill I could swallow as an older player. It's pretty obvious when the offense isn't going well to see that as a quarterback. And you may not believe it's you, but I think you should at least give him the shot. And so I would sit them down. I would tell Alan Bowman that he's going to be the starter because we're about to get to conference play. And I would sit down and I would tell Garrett Rangel and I would tell Gunnar Gundy. I would tell them the same thing. I would tell them, you guys need to continue to compete to be the backup. I would tell Gunnar I would tell Garrett Rangel in the meeting, I would say, we want you to be the guy next year. We're giving Alan this shot. It's his last chance possibly to play football. We hope you understand that as your career continues. But we want you to keep working and be the guy next year. And that's what I would tell him. And I don't think that there's any it's not a death sentence to be second or third for those two guys. If they want to, find an example, they can call me and ask me, because there's something Oklahoma State we know at Oklahoma State, it's not a death sentence. So there's always your opportunity this season to get to play still. So that's how I would look at it. And if you sit down at the end of this year, next year, and Zane or Gunnar or Garrett, if they're not happy and they want to transfer, what I would tell them then? I would say, if you think that's what's best for you, but transferring isn't some golden ticket nowadays. It's not grass is always greener. Just ask Spencer Sanders. And I don't mean to hate on him, but you need to look around at what your best opportunity is going to be to play. And if it's to continue to work hard and dedicate yourself to this program and grow, that could be the best option. I know, instant gratification, everybody wants to be the man and playing right now, but that's how I would handle it as somebody who's been through it. And that's the way I would go, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, just because you're not the starter now doesn't mean you can't be the starter later. Look at Zach Wilson. He
great example.
He thought he was going to be drinking Gatorade and chilling with the clipboard this year.
Mm-hmm. And he thought he was about to live it up in New York, making a few milli as a backup, man.
He thought he was going to be chilling, Clint. He's like, this is a learning year for me. I'm going to be the future of this organization. We'll just get the winning with let me learn from Aaron Rodgers. But
And one last point, and I saw this stat on Twitter, and people, it's tough. I talked a little bit on radio about not all reps are created equal. I think that's why they're rotating the scripted reps versus the middle of the game versus the end of the game against an inferior opponent. But also saw this stat on Twitter. Okay, so Gunnar Gundy's yards per carry, the running back's yards per carry when he's in the game. Royal John OSU had this on Twitter. 7.0 yards per carry from the running backs. His rushing game has been elite, 7.0 yards. Garrett Rangel's rushing yards per carry when he's been in the game has been 5.6 from running backs. Do you guess what? Just guess what Alan Bowman's yards per carry from what he's gotten out of the rushing game when he's been in.
I know it hasn't been good. I know it has been. It's got to be like
1.8.
Yikes.
So 7 yards a carry, 5.6, and 1.8. So it's tough to evaluate. They have all looked great.
But let's be honest. Let's be honest. A lot of those averages have been buoyed because of the situations that they've all been pressed in. And Alan Bowman's the only one that hasn't played the fourth quarter yet, right?
Correct. He's
the only one.
He's played
all the running game has and every game in the fourth quarter it's popping, it's going. So Bowman's the only one, just to put that variable.
No, you're right. Yeah,
he's the only one that hasn't played in the fourth quarter yet, and that's when the running game has been the most successful.
So he may get the benefit of the doubt this week, I would assume, since he hasn't played the third quarter. That's probably, or the fourth quarter. That's probably when he's going to play this week. So maybe that'll help. But I think. We've got to have it figured out. I wouldn't be surprised if South Alabama would continue to rotate. Iowa State, we continue to rotate, even getting into the Big 12, then off the bye, getting a player against Kansas State to be the quarterback.
Against Iowa State, you don't think Coach Gundy makes a decision by Iowa State?
I wouldn't be surprised is what I'm saying. Because then you got the bye, and then you got Kansas State. He likes to keep things pretty close. If you play all three there, Kansas State, you can name one behind the scenes, come out, they're not going to have a clue. Don't know that I necessarily agree with that approach, but what do you think is going to change in the next 2 weeks if they haven't figured it out by now? I don't know. That's a kind of rhetorical question.
I just think that this South Alabama's defense is going to be some pretty tough competition. I think what they say, the cream rises to the top. So I hopefully somebody puts themselves in a situation to take control of this job. I understand what you're saying. I mean, there's a situation where we could play three quarterbacks against Iowa State as well and try to evaluate even more. But in my opinion, going into Big 12 play, you would want to have your starting quarterback by that time, and not only just for my anxiety level, but also just for the fact that it's Big 12 play and it's time to get your number one guy, the reps that he needs, not only in practice, but in these games, especially Iowa State, and then going into the bye week and then going to get up against Kansas State. I want our number one guy to be ready and fully prepared for what's coming.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think if you take advantage of that extra week and get that number one guy those extra reps that he hasn't been getting, get him a game under his belt against Big 12 competition. I don't think you want your quarterback to play his first full game against a Kansas State team that is very good. So I would agree with you there. It's something that I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way it went down.
Yeah, I feel so. Hey, so I feel like we've talked about Arizona State enough. Before we bring in our guest for the week, we need to hand out our helmet stickers, and we've already teased it a little bit. So I'm gonna let you go first, and then I'll kind of back end this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ollie Gordon. I may have tipped my hand a little bit there,
just a little bit.
It's tough because I can't pick any quarterbacks. I mean, you know what I mean? There's no quarterback. The line has looked okay. I can't pick Stribling every week. Jaden Bray had, Presley had a touchdown, but I just think Ollie is a different kind of guy. He brings an element of physicality, but he can also, make guys miss, and he's a tremendous athlete. So 9 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown. On the road, the running game always helps quarterbacks. I'm sure that it helps if you're playing 3 quarterbacks. So I'm going to go with Ollie Gordon for this one. What about you?
Yeah, I think we teased it. I think you kind of guessed it earlier in the show, but I can't. You got to give it to Colin Oliver. I mean, he played phenomenal He made a major leap from game 1 to game 2, where people were kind of questioning the move, and then they put him in there. He played well a linebacker. They put him up that edge spot on that 4-2, and he came off the edge, and he was having his way with the Arizona State offensive line as well, and getting in the quarterback's face. So he made a very big impact in this game, and I was really impressed with his performance. So hopefully that continues to get better from that linebacker position.
Absolutely. Well said. I think we nailed it with those two guys. They will be Colin, Ollie, if you're listening, your helmet stickers in the mail.
Well, that being said, we put a bow on Arizona State, and now it's time to move forward to South Alabama. Well, Clint, ready to bring in our guest?
Absolutely, man. Let's bring him in.
All right. Sports writer from AL.com, our guy, Creg Stephenson. Creg, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for joining us. We try to get a little intel, find out a little bit about, the upcoming opponent for our listeners out there. So we really appreciate you coming on and taking some time out to do this for us. We'll just start with a kind of high level question, that I've seen a few players that are coming back, some that may be out for this game. So is there a, kind of a medical report for South Alabama?
Yeah, a couple of key guys. Braylon McReynolds, who was the number 2 running back, the kickoff returner. He is almost certainly out for the season. Broke his collarbone against Tulane in the opener. They think maybe bowl game, if they get there, he might have a chance to come back. Really explosive guy, probably the fastest guy on the team, and was a really good complimentary back to LaDamian Webb, who's the starter. And then Devin Voisin, who hurt his knee last week against Southeastern Louisiana. They're listing him as doubtful. I would be very, very surprised if he plays. He may be out for a good while. And he's, they had 3 guys that kind of were all similar in terms of catches and yards last year, but he's really Carter Bradley, the quarterback. He's kind of his security blanket, the guy he looks at when things break down. So he is a very, very significant loss.
And I saw where 2 safeties, Jalen Jordan and Keith Gallman, they're going to be back. I don't know how long they were out. It looked like maybe one of them just got hurt last game, but it seems like he's going to be good to go.
Yeah, Jordan got hurt against Tulane, did not play last week, and then Gallman got hurt early in the game against Southeastern Louisiana. But those guys are both back. They're both practicing. They have 3 guys that kind of rotated the 2 deep safeties. That would be Gallman, Jordan, and Jaden Voisin, which is Devin's twin brother. Those guys kind of all through, but it looks like all 3 will be back. They also have a Baylor transfer, Mike Harris, who had played quite a bit in the last couple of games. So they kind of run those 4 guys through there.
Awesome.
So to give the Oklahoma State fans just a good idea of what we're going to be looking at on Saturday, what kind of offense and what kind of defense would you kind of say South Alabama is primarily?
Yeah, well, offensively, schematically, I'm not comparing the 2, but schematically, they basically run Alabama's offense, which, because Major Applewhite is the offensive coordinator. They actually have 3 assistants who came out of Alabama's staff: Gordon Steele, the offensive line coach, and Rob Ezel, the tight ends coach. So they run the same scheme as Alabama. They'll run some pistol. They'll run a lot of shotgun. They very rarely will go under center. 3 wide or 2 tight ends a lot. 1 back, and they'll try to. They want to run the ball. They want to play power ball, but they'll also throw the ball. Carter Bradley, the quarterback, who's the son of Gus Bradley, Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator, former NFL head coach. He has a very strong NFL caliber arm, I would say. So they'll take some deep shots as well. Now defensively, they run a 4-2-5. They call it the Swarm D. Dave Womack, which is Kane's father, longtime defensive coordinator all over the place, including Arkansas, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, some other places. They call it a vision defense, where they're going to try to, read the quarterback's eyes and figure out where to go from there. And we'll blitz some, attack some, but mainly it's a reaction type defense.
Yeah, I saw where Carter Bradley and LaDamian Webb were on the Maxwell Award watch list. That was the first thing that popped out when I was watching, looking at the schedule. And Coach Gundy, you mentioned some of the overlap with the Alabama staff, and obviously, that's a league and that's a team that prides itself on physicality. Coach Gundy, I saw where he said this is going to be the most physical team that we've played yet. So identity-wise, is that they like to be physical, win the line of scrimmage? I assume that's kind of the identity with that overlap.
Yeah, for sure. And I was really kind of struck by that. I mean, they just played a Pac-12 team, which, and obviously, I think he said maybe the most physical team we will play, which really surprised me when you think about some of the Big 12 teams. But yeah, they do try to push people around. They got a lot of very experienced defensive linemen. I think there are 15 sixth-year seniors on the team, and 5 of them are defensive linemen. I think that's the right number. But anyway, so they really do try to beat you up at the line of scrimmage. Now, it doesn't always work, but that's what they try to do.
So in your opinion, I've heard, some people have the opinion that this defensive line might be a little undersized. Is that something that you think, or is it something that you've heard, or is it something that we should be aware of?
I mean, it would be undersized for the Big 12. I don't know if it's undersized for the Sun Belt. I mean, they got a 300 pound nose tackle, and I get the two ends are about 280, 290. So I mean, it depends on what standard we're going to, but I don't know that they're small by any means on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, physicality has been something that the Oklahoma State offensive line hasn't necessarily been very good at. So that'll be a good battle to watch if that's their identity and mentality up front, especially on the defensive line. Are there any guys maybe that we haven't talked about? We mentioned Carter Bradley and LaDamian Webb. Is there anybody else that maybe Oklahoma State fans should have their eyes on that it could pop or could be a difference maker for South Alabama in this game?
Yam Banks, who is the nickel safety. They call it the Husky position in their defense. It's a really important position. You have to do a lot of, cornerback, safety, even some linebacker type duty. He's a really talented guy. I think he's going to be an NFL player one day. I think he's one to keep an eye on. Trey Kaiser, inside linebacker from Sulphur, Oklahoma, grew up an Oklahoma State fan. But I talked to him today, actually, and he said Mike Gundy probably doesn't even know who he is because he didn't recruit him, but he grew up a big Cowboys fan. So that's another guy. He's actually number 22 normally, but he's going to wear 5 this week. South Alabama has a tradition where a kind of a captain of the week gets number 5 in honor of a player who died in a motorcycle accident in 2011. So Kaiser gets that number this week, not only in recognition of his leadership, but the fact that he's going home to Oklahoma.
Anybody on the offensive side that you think we may need to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, Colin Lacey, number 4, had an 84-yard touchdown reception last week. Kind of he was running back in high school, kind of a track guy. They moved him to receiver in college, and he's really kind of come on since he's been in college. That would be one to keep an eye on. DJ Thomas Jones, who's a tight end, number 8, really athletic guy, transferred in from Ole Miss last year. They just kind of inconsistent catching the ball, but if they can get him the ball down the field, he can be a real playmaker.
So we have a little bit of an interesting situation. I know Clint's really intrigued to hear the answer to this one, but sorry, quarterback, I'm going to jump the gun. But 3 quarterbacks that the South Alabama defense is going to have to face. I mean, I know it's an unusual situation. I know you wrote a column about it here recently. What's the feel around campus about defending something like that, and what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, you hear a lot of times teams will have 2 quarterbacks that, especially early in the year, trying to figure out who's the guy, and they'll rotate them in. But some teams have done it even every play. Arkansas State a couple of years ago had a situation where they were rotating quarterbacks every quarter. But I've never really heard of 3, at least not for this length of time. And it definitely poses a challenge, I would say. I asked Kane Womack about it. He said, when he watches them, he doesn't see a lot of difference between them, and which, I guess is good. They're coached up pretty well. And the fact that, Mike Gundy's able to get 3 guys ready to play kind of shows what kind of offensive mind he is.
Yeah, it's certainly a unique. We're just one away from being able to have 1 per quarter. So maybe Deion, you can come out of retirement and get in there. I don't know.
I ain't got no eligibility left in my knee. Me can't hold up, Clint.
Well, before we let you get out of here, Craig, my last question would be, if South Alabama were to come in and pull an upset and win, what do you think that formula? What would that look like? I mean, is it going to be obviously turnovers play a big part in upsets, but special teams as well. Kind of what would you see going right for South Alabama to win this game?
Yeah, South Alabama has one win against a Power 5 team. That was against Mississippi State in 2016. It was an early game. They kind of caught them sleeping. Last year, they very nearly pulled the upset at UCLA. It was an early game. They kind of caught them sleeping. So I just don't know. That's not a factor this week, obviously, with the night game and being the third game of the year. Oklahoma State has wrecked South Alabama the 2 times they played. Of course, that was in the Mason Rudolph, James Washington glory days for the Cowboys.
Yeah. But Cornelius, Tylan Wallace, there are some good players on those teams.
Yeah, for sure. I think South Alabama's going to have to be really aggressive and take some real chances. I mean, that's kind of where they are. They're typically that way anyway. You'll see them go for it on fourth down a lot. They definitely will rely on the analytics and say, hey, if it's 4th and 2 on our own 35 and we think we can make it, we will. Or they'll run the ball on 3rd and 8 to set up a 4th down play sometimes. I mean, so they'll roll the dice, and I think that's what they're going to have to do to beat a team that's definitely more talented across the board.
Creg, I got 2 more questions for you before we get you out of here. You already mentioned how Oklahoma State is, and as they should be, more talented across the board. But if there is any, where do you see South Alabama having the advantage?
Well, I would assume, even though they're not facing each other, South Alabama seems to be more experienced at quarterback. Obviously, I mentioned Carter Bradley, 2nd year as a starter, although some of his weapons are missing. So the fact, if they can put some points on the board early, that would certainly seem to give them an advantage. Not really sure. The kicking game, they're pretty solid. I don't know how good Oklahoma State is, but, South Alabama's been pretty solid over the years. But, yeah, not knowing a ton about Oklahoma State other than what I've read and seen a little bit, it's hard to say. But I do think that this is an experienced South Alabama team, even though, and like I said, they're diminished a couple of guys. But, they had basically 20 guys that had started at one point in their career coming back this year. So they've been in big games for sure.
This is one of the questions that I always like to ask media members that come on our show and talk about opposing teams. I know you just mentioned that you haven't seen a lot of Oklahoma State here recently, but if there's a position group that battle that you're looking forward to seeing on Saturday, which one would it be and why?
You always want to see how things look along the offensive line. South Alabama, even though they have 4 starters back on the offensive line, they've moved some guys around. They moved a guard to center. They moved one guard from the one side to the other. They've been kind of shaky. I mean, Tulane's defensive line, which was experienced, kind of pushed them around a little bit. So I'm looking to see maybe what they can do against Oklahoma State, which, again, is a Power 5 program. So you figure they're going to have some good athletes on the defensive line.
That sounds a lot like the Oklahoma State offensive line, bringing back a ton of guys, having to probably shuffle a little bit this week, I would think. It sounds like maybe Coach Gundy's getting some guys back and thinking about moving some guys around. So, it could be similar, even though they're not going against each other. Offensive lines are concerned as well. So, Deion, that's all I've got. I don't know if you've got any other questions.
No, I think we're good. Creg, man, thank you so much for joining us. And again, go ahead and plug your stuff before you get out of here. Where can people find you and where can people find all your information?
Yeah, al.com/USA. You can find all my coverage on South Alabama. And then I'm on Twitter, X, whatever it is, if it still exists. Creg Stephenson, CregStephenson.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out of your night to talk with us and let our listeners get a little bit more information on South Alabama.
All right, guys. Happy to do it.
See you.
Thanks.
Well, that was Creg Stephenson from AL.com. Man, had some really good insight. Guys, really do check out his column that he just wrote about South Alabama having to go up against the 3-headed monster at the quarterback position for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. It was a really good read. Clint, what'd you think of Creg Stephenson and his insight, and what do you think about the matchup coming up?
Well, he was great. Obviously it's great to get guys on from other programs to let everybody hear, kind of what they think of obviously OSU, what their team and programs looking like. But it's going to be interesting. I think this was the first game that a lot of us circled. Coming off at Arizona State right before conference play, that could trip up the Cowboys. I know I certainly did. And then like I said earlier, when the Maxwell Award watch list came out and they had 2 players on it, which is pretty big time.
Yeah.
Carter Bradley and LaDamian Webb. LaDamian Webb, I believe, is coming off an off-season surgery, so he hasn't had a ton of carries in the first 2 games. So he could be pretty fresh if he's fully healthy. I think it's going to be a tough one. I think with the overlap in the staff that we talked about, the physicality, the offensive line is really going to have to come to play, even if those guys maybe, I guess certain positions may be a little undersized. So I think it'll be a really good test. I really do. I think this is a game that there's not going to be any, running vanilla stuff on defense, holding back, offensive plays. I think you've got to just start getting comfortable and letting it hang out and try to win this game in the first quarter and not let it linger.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the pregame show about, not being as vanilla and, kind of unfolding the offense and the defense and showing the world a little bit more. I mean, but in the postgame show, Colin Oliver, talked to the press and the media and said they still haven't ran defensively haven't run a majority of their stuff that they practice in the fall and in the spring. So it's going to be interesting to see how much more is unveiled on Saturday versus South Alabama, because I think it's going to be a situation where they do need it more than they did in the past 2 games, especially offensively. It's going to be interesting how the offensive line handles that physicality. Excuse me, if I can speak. Physicality.
A
long week. That physicality that South Alabama is been known for. I mean, I've read and done some research, and they talk about how fast and aggressive their linebackers are, and how they like to play downhill, and that's something that the offensive line is going to have to face, and it's going to be interesting to see how Coach Dunn handles that as far as play calling, where, when you have a team that's that aggressive, there's some things that you can do to kind of, make them hesitate and play on their heels. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of, play calling that comes about because of that situation. It's gonna be an interesting Friday night, Clint.
Yeah, it is. My last comment on it. I think, you talked a little bit about the aggressiveness. Creg did as well. And if there's one thing I'm looking at from a defensive coordinator's perspective, and I am coming on the road to obviously as an underdog, and I'm going to play 3 quarterbacks, I'm going to blitz just from everywhere. With that, I mean, how many reps are they getting with different blitzes, with splitting 3 different reps? I mean, I'm going to try to do whatever I can to throw those guys off and put pressure on them. Obviously they already have quite a bit of pressure trying to win the job. If you can find a crack in that, I would try to exploit it. So that's something that I think that we're going to have to, protect against. If you're going to run 3 quarterbacks out there, that you're going to have to be mindful of those mistakes could possibly be made.
Yeah, and on the other side of things, it's going to be interesting, defensively, how they do. I mean, Creg mentioned it, the advantage in his eye, and I don't know, this might be the obvious answer to everybody else, but I didn't even think about it, was the quarterback position for South Alabama. They got an experienced guy back there who has a really strong arm, and this is a defense that made some mistakes last week, and this is a secondary that made some mistakes and have some things to correct, and with an experienced guy back there instead of the freshman that they played versus Arizona State, he could take advantage of these guys in some situations that they're not accustomed to. So hopefully they get things cleaned up, and we don't let that advantage that everybody thinks is an advantage, take advantage of us.
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages, but appreciate everybody for tuning in once again. Like we've mentioned, we're going to try to have people on from different programs, give a little insight into what we're facing each week. So shout out to Creg for coming on. Deion, that's all I've got.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, we just want to mention here at OSU Max, we do have everybody tune in because they got a special edition. The Hall of Honor is being announced, and the presentations are taking place on Friday and Saturday. So you got to give it up to our guy, Justin Blackman. He's going into the Hall, and also Clint's guy, Ricky Fowler, is going in as well. So they'll be following not just those guys, but everybody who's going in. So they'll have, like, if you can't be there, they'll have a special presentation and everything. So make sure you tune into OSU Max so you can follow and see and celebrate with those guys, because it's a great honor, a really, really good honor.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, Clint, ready to get out of here?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, remember, guys, this is OSU Max, and thank you for tuning into the Old Pope Show. And always stay loyal and true.
Go Popes.